Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm happy to have everyone with me. I am going to do a couple of announcements really quick, and then we will get into the show, which I'm really excited to talk about. Dimensions are so cool, and they're kind of like, elusive or hard to understand. So, um, hey, Emma, how are you? Thank you for being here with me today. So, really quick, just a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. I am not going to be here for the Sunday show. I am going to Arizona to go see my mom. So, I'm going to be gone for the entire weekend. But Emma has generously uh, said that she would step in for me and be John's co-host on Sunday, which should be fun because those guys are crazy when they're together. Hey, Stephanie, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you for being here. So I made the thumbnail for that. I'll show you guys really quick. Let's see, and I will post this before. So there we are. So and John will be together on Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for the Sunday hangout. Should be fun. Those two are so silly when they're together, and they do a lot of giggling and things like that. So it's going to be a totally different dynamic, I'm sure, but it'll be cool. So that is that. And then where in Arizona? Oh, she lives in Santan Valley. So I don't know if you're familiar, but she's my mom. She's been had a lot of medical stuff, and so anyway, I'm gonna go see her then. And so I won't be here. I won't be here on Sunday. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about today, which I'm really excited to talk about because I think that dimensions are so cool, and it's kind of hard to understand because when you hear people talking about it, it's difficult to kind of figure out exactly what they're talking about. Dimensions, are they talking about densities? What does that mean? So I wanted to do something and put something together where it made it a little bit more understand. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I kind of geek out on like the science and the just to have like the understanding of it. Um so anyway, so welcome to another episode of Sacred Sight Multidimensional Me. And of course, I'm Lisa. So we're going to kind of bend our minds a little bit and to kind of try to think about how we can talk about something that sounds simple, but it kind of unfolds dynamically because it's, dimensions, right? So this is episode 6. So, what is a dimension really? Are they just layers in space and time? Are they other worlds? Can we live in them, visit them? You know, can you feel them? And what do they say about, who and what we are? Those were kind of my questions, about trying to define it and defining, what a dimension is. So I kind of felt like, well, let's just start at the beginning, for at least from this dimension's beginning. In physics, dimensions are typically defined as like measurable extents, right? Like length, width, height, and time. That gives us the 4 dimensions, the 3 of space, and then the 1 of time. So this is like the familiar 3D world, that we eat and we cry and we love and we YouTube it, right? So but theorists, especially in string theory and M theory, which is multidimensional theory, show that, there's 10 or 11 dimensions. That's their proposal. So I have um, a video or a show, not a video, like a slide I want to show you. Hi, Net. How are you? Um, let's see. Would you say it usually goes over your head? So I'm listening because I might be able to explain, you might be able to explain it to me an easier way to absorb. Well, that's what I'm hoping for because it's like it's kind of interesting to understand. But I wanted to kind of go from, what they say in the current theories that are out there and then going beyond that into like our esoteric and spiritual kind of thing. And then I also want to give you some tidbits and stuff of things that I've personally seen and kind of asked my guidance about, just for an understanding. So I have a thing that I created. Let's see. And I have to start at the beginning. So up here. So this is kind of a visual of string theory versus multidimensional theory. And, it's got a lot of stuff here that it added to it in the AI that I used, which we're not going to really go over, but the visual in the middle I thought was like the most important aspect of it. So we're looking at string theory here, and we're looking at multidimensional theory, M theory here. So when you're talking about that, they're proposing that there's 10 or 11 dimensions depending on which one you're talking about. Most of them are invisible, and they're curled up like cosmic, like origami, um, things that are like beyond our perception. These dimensions are described using advanced mathematics and are essential to unifying the fundamental forces of nature, like gravity and electromagnetism, if you have a strong or weak nuclear force. So let's kind of break them down with some quick science that's like bullet points. We're just going to do bullet points. So in string theory, that proposes that the fundamental particles we observe are not point-like dots, but tiny vibrating strings, and each vibration mode of the string corresponds to a different particle. That there's in superstring theory, they talk about 10 dimensions. The first one being length, that would be 1D. The second one being height, that would be 2D. Width would be 3D, and 4D would be time. And then kind of like 5 through 10 are additional like spatial dimensions that are compactified and curled up so small that they're not detectable, at a human scale. I don't know about you, but that doesn't really fly with me because we talk about these other dimensions and we talk about things living within them. But if these are like compactified dimensions that are so tiny that they're not even detectable, I don't know. How does that work? It's hard for my brain to comprehend that. And in M theory, it's an extension of string theory that proposes 11 dimensions. So let me show you um, the. Um, I'm gonna I always have to go out and in because I'm afraid that if I stay in there and I move stuff around, there was one time we were doing that with you guys and you couldn't see it when we were moving off of other things. So let me go back in. Although I don't know, I think this is the same thing, so it should work. Um, okay, so can I make this bigger? Of course I can. So, but you can kind of see the pictures anyway. So here's like 1D would be like a straight line, 2D would be like a square, 3D would be a cube, 4D, it goes on to look like it's taking up two places in space. 5D has got this wagon wheel thing, which is really interesting because I've seen that. 6D, 7D looks like it gets more etheric, right? 8, 9, 10, it's like a singular point, and 11. So it's interesting to kind of look at it from that perspective. So M theory is unifying the live string theories under a broader umbrella. The 11th dimension allows for the existence of branes, BRANES, which are multidimensional membranes, which can include the entire universe. So if you think about that first slide that I showed you, where M theory kind of looked like points and it kind of looked like it was making a square, it was doing something. So, and then compactification, these extra dimensions are theorized to be compacted into extremely tiny spaces, often modeled by Calabi-Yau manifolds, which I'm going to show you. They're complex geometrical shapes that allow the extra dimensions to be hidden. This all sounds kind of overwhelming, but stick with me because we're going to kind of roll it out and it makes more sense. So let's look at Cali-Yau. So here is a AI generated for me of Cali-Yau. So you'll see like space, right? And it goes out into these membranes, and each one of these points of light would be, like stars, it could be galaxies. And then compacted within them are these little extra bands of space that are existing. And within those, there are all these other little tiny points of light. You see that inside this one that I'm pointing at here? And so the theory would be that that is where the other dimensions would live. So when you look at it from a surface level, it would look like there are dimensions, but when you would kind of go into it, it would look like it was I wonder if I exit off of this, would this go away? Yes. Okay, good. Sorry, I'm not really great at this stuff. And my kids don't help me. I think that they should help me more with this stuff. But anyway, so that's what the Calabi-Yau would be explaining. So I have a YouTube video too that I kind of want to show you guys about that. So let me get that for you so you can see. It's all good. I'm trying. Oh, good. Yeah, stick with me. It's kind of interesting when we get a little farther down, but we're just going to lay the framework right now. So let's talk about the Calabi-Yau. Here we go. This is Brian Greene. He wrote one of the books that really got me into physics in my 20s. I read it so many times, you guys. So here we go.
To use it all up, which means in the inflationary theory, the Big Bang giving rise to our universe is likely not a one-time event. Instead, the fuel not only generates our Big Bang, but it would also generate countless other Big Bangs, each giving rise to its own separate universe, with our universe becoming but one bubble in a grand cosmic bubble bath of universes. And now, if we meld this with string theory, here's the picture we're led to. Each of these universes has extra dimensions. The extra dimensions take on a wide variety of different shapes. The different shapes yield different physical features. And we find ourselves in one universe instead of another simply because it's only in our universe that the physical features, like the amount of dark energy, are right for our form of life to take hold. And this is the...
Okay. So let me stop sharing on that. I didn't see if I am on Facebook, so hopefully that's on there, because it's not allowing me to do the where I can edit privacy. So hopefully it's on there. Okay, so that is that one. Let me get back to here. Okay. I'm going to turn that down too. I can hear it. So, okay. So does that make sense? So it looks like it was, so these are two names, two last names of physicists who found the kind of curled up membranes of dimensions and saw that there was extra space within them and decided that this is where these things can mathematically make sense, where there would be other dimensions. So when you're looking at it from a perspective of kind of looking at it 1D, 2D, 3D, 4D, well, guess what? There's these little curled up areas that also exist, and each one of those have space within them. So that's kind of the understanding, if that makes sense. So let's break it down more. And then I'm also going to share my downloads here because we're going to dive into the origin and significance of the 12 dimensions, though, because that's what we kind of hear in spirituality, right? We talk about the 12 dimensions, and it's not lost on me that we also talk about this 12 strand DNA and how they likely are connected. And I want to talk about that with my meditation that I saw and talking to my guidance about this as well, because it is... it's kind of interesting how that works. Yeah, I don't think this live is working on YouTube. I hate when that happens, you guys. All right. There's nothing I can do. I don't know. Okay. So the science. So why mainstream physics stops at 10 or 11? Because I wanted to understand, like, so if we're talking about 12 in a spiritual way, right? Why aren't they talking about it in math? Why aren't they talking about it in physics? So in string theory, we have 10 dimensions. In superstring theory, it's like 9 spatial and then the one that's considered time. And then there's 11 dimensions in M theory, which adds that bulk dimension that allows for that brain theory of multi-universes and dimensional membranes and stuff like that. So why not more? Because math gets extremely unstable beyond 11 in those models. So 11 is where mainstream science stops. For now, they often say that there's no form beyond 5D. But I was shown that form exists if you match the frequency of it. And I talked about that a little bit before when I was talking to my guidance because I had seen something. So it's not less real. It's just faster, and it's like finer. From our perspective, it's invisible, like a race car speeding past is kind of the analogy that I gave you guys. Um, but if you're in the same lane, going the same speed, you can see the driver. You can kind of make out things about them, what their hair is like, what their eyes are like, things like that. Um, but I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what I saw with Gianna. I told this story, I think, when I was talking to Laura Eisenhower when she was interviewing me. So if you saw that one, then we would talk about that one a little bit. But I had seen Gianna, and I had seen her, and I had heard that it was like 7D, 8D, and it was like a spectrum because it's not really like levels like we kind of put them in. But she had a physicality to her, although it looked very different. And so um, it's like that's what 7+D really means. It's not no body, it's just more of like a light body, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Um, when we get into that part of it. So, with metaphysics and spiritual traditions, the 12 dimension model, which there's like all kinds of channeled sources about that. There's spiritual systems that talk about it. Esoteric teachings use a 12-dimensional model, and they describe like the architecture of reality and human ascension. And here's how it typically breaks down. So in the 12D dimensional thing. So this is like a general spiritual framework. So they have the 1D, which would be like mineral, atomic, and consciousness, right? It's like the structure of existence. And then in 2D, they would talk about like plants, mycelial life, instinctual consciousness, if you're talking about it from that perspective. And then in 3D, we're talking about human physical form. We're talking about linear time. We're talking about ego. In 4D, we're talking about the astral realm. We're talking about your emotions, the dream state, duality. And in 5D, we're talking about unity consciousness. We're talking about unconditional love. We're talking about no polarity anymore, right? There goes the whole duality of things. In 6D, they're talking about sacred geometry, templates, and we're talking about like morphogenetic fields. And then in 7D, we're talking about like your oversoul awareness and galactic consciousness. In 8D, we're talking about pure frequency, like light body mastery. And then in 9D, we're talking about collective consciousness of soul groups and like universal minds, like a larger from an outer perspective, like a zoomed out perspective. In 10D, we're talking about like avataric consciousness. We're talking about like planetary creators. And then in 11D, we're talking about cosmic architecture. And we're talking about like time matrix engineers. And then in 12D, we're talking about source, right? The source template. We're talking about original divine blueprint. The 12th dimension is often described as the eternal crystalline field of unity, the source layer, and the universe's blueprint. Think of it like a still point where consciousness first decided to individuate. And so let's talk a little bit about the 12-strand DNA with it. And we're going to loop back around with this stuff, guys, but I'm just giving you like the basic breakdown of it. In mainstream genetics, we of course have 2 strands of DNA, but metaphysical teachings say that humans originally had 12 energetic DNA strands. Some say from like Lyran or Syrian or angelic lineages, and that each strand corresponds with one dimension of consciousness. They also say that activating dormant strands is equal to restoring our multidimensional awareness. Have you guys heard that? That's kind of what they talk about, right? And then channeled works like the Pleiadian teachings from Barbara Marciniak, I think is her name, and then Ashiana Dean, and the Law of One speak to this as well. So, and really, so do so many other light workers who feel like they're kind of reassembling our multidimensional template now, right? Like that's kind of what it looks like that we're doing. So, I don't know what do you guys? I don't see your video on Facebook. I know. I'm trying to see video cast, edit post. I don't know why. Sometimes lately I've noticed that it doesn't allow me to edit the, let me just look one more place. I'm sorry, you guys. I don't mean to, I feel like there was like a place where I could edit the privacy in like a different place. I thought I saw that. Live now. No. Yeah. I don't know. All of a sudden it like changed. There used to be like in those three dots and I would have to put it as public. But now all of a sudden it's not allowing for it anymore. So I guess I'm just gonna have to move on. I don't know. So let's see what you guys think. So you believe that there's 12. Um, yeah, I'm going to tell you about a meditation thing that I saw, and then it got me into this whole, like, I say conversation. It's not really a conversation. It's kind of like downloads and stuff with my guidance, but I'm going to show you what I saw, and it's really interesting, but it does resonate. Um, I was listening to a guy the other day who was suggesting our DNA is not fixed, and we can change in our environment. I mean, it makes sense if you can create in the now, right? And you're talking about us kind of changing our environment and changing it in like multidimensionality because we're shifting moment to moment to moment. So it would make sense that, you could do it. It would definitely be worth listening to kind of see what he's saying. Is DNA, i.e., DNA we're born with, can change over our lifetime? Yeah. I mean, it stands to reason that that's what it could be. So let's talk about a little bit about my vision that I had with so it was like 12 spheres and I was in meditation. So I was shown, and I thought what I was looking at was like 12 bubbles. And, you hear about that stuff in esoteric kind of like systems. So spheres can like represent like dimensional levels. Um, think of like the tree of life or the flower of life or Metatron's cube. And I was thinking to myself, if I overlay those on each other, how close would they be? So I did that and I put them together just to kind of see what it would do. And it came up with this image. So those are three separate images, right? We're talking about the tree of life, we're talking about the flower of life, and we're talking about Metatron's cube, kind of overlaid over each other. I thought that was interesting because it kind of gives you those same points, um, that we're talking about. So, and then with the 12 sphere system, that kind of reflects like the clock or wheel of the full human divine template. It's the 12 points of consciousness, it's the 12 harmonics, it's the 12 aspects of self. And so I wanted to see that as well. And so I created this one. So it's got like all of those things incorporated into one. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. Um, and I think, what is this one? This one is when I was trying to talk about like the 12 strand DNA, and I was asking AI to create something for me with 12 strands of DNA. And it was really interesting because I just thought the way that it could comprehend it, it kind of looks like a Fibonacci sequence, right? And I was thinking like that's probably not, it's not what I was envisioning, it's not what I was seeing. But when I saw it that way, I thought to myself, like, wow, talk about like a hidden message within the message. To have it come up with a 12 strand DNA looking like a Fibonacci sequence, which we see all over reality. So I thought that was kind of interesting too, just to have it from that perspective. Um, you can alter your DNA through ancestral healing, as an example. Yeah, ancestral images. Thank you. Yeah. Wow. Right. I know. I thought that was crazy. Um, so anyway, so when we're talking about it, while physics describes like up to 11 dimensions in a deep meditation, I experienced something beyond that. So I saw 12 distinct spheres, or they at first to me, they look like bubbles. And then I was thinking to myself that I think that these kind of correlate and correspond to like ancient, like intuitive understanding that we aren't just 3D beings with like two strands of DNA, but multidimensional light beings connected with like a 12-point grid of consciousness. And each sphere is like a layer of awareness or a harmonic point in a greater like song, because if you look at it from like a harmonic point of view, each one of those holds their own frequency, right? And I've described that before as like a symphony, that you kind of hear the corresponding frequencies all together. Again, I think I talked about that with Laura Eisenhower. And each one of these bubbles was like alive. So what I was seeing was I was looking at a bubble, and it kind of popped, and there was all of these little floating, I thought they were like grains of sand, and they were moving um it throughout, like kind of floating in every direction that you could imagine, and going off. And what I was hearing in this was that this bubble was 3D, and those individual things that looked like grain of sands were actually points of light as well, and they were the collective consciousness of all of us. And it introduced itself to me as 3D, and was saying to me that it was a collective consciousness and that it was created through love by all of us. And that when we kind of came together, we created this little bubble of being, of life, and everything that was created within it. And each one of those bubbles represented a different dimension, which is why I was thinking that there was 12 dimensions. But it's also why Marina Jacobi's meditations resonated with me, because one of the things that she talks about doing is putting yourself in this structure, the spheric structure that is actually like a water molecule. And so when you're floating in this water molecule, you have your light body in there, and you start to create a toroidal field around yourself. And this is the place where you create from. And it really resonated with me because I had that interaction with what was 3D consciousness. And it was a bubble, which is what? Water, right? And so I found that like super, super interesting. Um, by using that was just Dolly from DALL dash E, Dolly. Um, so anyway, so I thought that that was kind of an interesting take on it, because that's what I personally saw myself. And scientists like Edward Witten and Brian Greene, who I showed you the video from, he's the author of The Elegant Universe, um, which I've read several times, have brought these theories to public consciousness. Greene describes extra dimensions as being like tiny loops at every point in space, much like looking at a garden hose from far away in 1D. And then when you go close up, you can see that it's like cylindrical. And then Nassim Haramein, one of my favorite physicists, you guys know that, of all time. So Nassim challenges mainstream models by presenting the connectedness of everything through the unified field theory, which we've talked about on other shows. His hollow fractal graphic universe model suggests that the structure of space-time itself is fractal and holographic, meaning that every point contains the whole, and that the whole is encoded in every point. So dimensions then are not just places, but frequencies of information. So that's like that would be like frequency and information, and the dimensions would be nested, kind of like Russian dolls, inside infinite geometry. So that's like an interesting concept, but I needed to understand the time element as a dimension better. So, you can talk about it spatially as far as a place and a time, but I was trying to understand it as, okay, so how does time fit into this? I needed to understand it a little bit better. So here's what I found. So I found out that time as a dimension from a scientific take. In physics, especially in Einstein's theory of relativity, time's treated as the fourth dimension, just like length, width, and height define, where something is in space. Time tells us where something is happening. So together, these four create space-time, a fabric that can be bent, stretched, or warped by mass energy. This is why time moves differently around a black hole or in a spaceship going near the speed of light. Gravity and speed literally alter the passage of time. So this isn't a theory anymore. It's been confirmed with like GPS satellites and atomic clocks. In Einstein's view, time isn't separate from space. They're intertwined. So that's why it's called space-time, not, space then time. Time as a dimension in higher models. In string theory and M theory, time is still just one of the 11 dimensions, but it's unique. It doesn't behave like the spatial ones. It's not something that you can go left or right in. It seems to move in only one direction forward, and you can't turn it, and at least not that easily. So, I mean, it's kind of flawed math anyway, right? But in higher dimensional theories, and many metaphysical traditions, time isn't linear. It's not often described. It's not described as going in one direction, right? It can be described as like cyclical and have it in like spiral loops. You can talk about it being layered, like there's layered times coexisting at once. You can talk about it being fluid, where you can go kind of into the past or the future simultaneously. And it's also non-local. So it would be to not have it just be here and now. An example of that would be like your consciousness can move across time through your memory. If it was only going linear, you wouldn't be able to remember things from your past because it would only go one direction, right? Or your intuition, or people that can do remote viewing like Jessica Jones. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about that concept as well? Um, let's see, let me catch up. Thank you. What you're describing is what people are seeing when they join Pam Gregory's meditations. Oh, interesting. That's interesting. The Russian doll image, cool. This is the second time this week I heard this example. Oh, really? Oh, that's pretty cool. So the speed of light is not constant. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe, maybe not. If we're talking about it from what perspective? Are we talking about it from the 3D perspective, where physics works in a specific way? Probably then. But if we're talking about it from an expanded point of view, where we're moving outside of 3D, then I would say certainly not. Right? A spiral. Celestial. I mean, that's so interesting about Pam Gregory's meditations. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, so let's go in a little bit more here. So consciousness and time. Your consciousness isn't bound by linear time. We know that, right? That's why you can remember the past and you can imagine the future, and you can suddenly feel a strong knowing about like another life, right? So you guys know my friend Katie, from Katie and the Chorus. Do you guys know her? Let me see if I can find her here. This is Katie's book, The Book of Awakening. It's really good. If you haven't read it, I strongly recommend it. Not just because I love her, but just because she's amazing. And she talks to a group that lives outside of our reality, and she calls them the Chorus. And so the Chorus, Katie's non-physical co-authors, would likely say that time is a construct used to help us navigate this 3D physical reality, but outside of it, everything exists now. So from their perspective, the Chorus's perspective, time is a dimensional frequency band. So tune into a different one and you get a different life, you get a different version, you get a different reality. Also, from their perspective, emotions and your focus determine your location in the time stream, which is a really interesting take on that. But when you also think of it in terms of the fact that emotions carry a frequency, right? And where you focus your attention is where you kind of go. Um, the fact that it could determine your location in time space makes sense. And then the other thing that the Chorus would say is that the past isn't fixed and the future is not distant. It's accessible now through resonance. So what are you resonating with? It's kind of like your awareness is a time traveler, if you think about it, because what are you focusing on? When you say time is a dimension, what are we really saying? We're saying it's not a ticking clock, it's a coordinate of perception, right? It's something that you can stretch or contract depending on your state. And it's variable, it's not constant. And in quantum physics, they confirm that. So why does that matter? When you begin to see time as a dimension rather than a fixed time, you realize that you're not a passive observer of your life, that you can reprogram the past, right? Do trauma work, timeline healing, that you can interact with the future, you can manifest, you can have intuitive insights, and you realize that your entire multidimensional self exists in parallel in each of your parallel timelines. You're walking a different strand of like this time web, right? So you wouldn't think of time as like a road, but more like a river, and you're the boat, and you're the water, and you're the observer on the shore all at once. So, what do you guys think of that? Um, I've always loved time travel stories growing up. There must be something to this fondness. Yeah, maybe it resonates. Maybe an understanding that what we're looking at is a little bit more than what we recognize to be the truth. Um, I'm just trying again to see if I can save this post. It's so frustrating when um, I post it and I can't get it to show live on Facebook. What are you gonna do? I don't know. Okay, so yeah, you can do a past life regression and change the outcome, right? Um, yeah, you still like it. Me too. Your awareness, your focus is where you find yourself. It's variable. Love the science you're laying out to back this up. Thank you. Yeah, I kind of need that myself just to have an understanding. Like when I'm hearing things and stuff, I love concepts and I love to hear about things from a deeper perspective, but I need the whys, I need the hows to it, at least from the understanding and the perspective that we can do now, with the understanding that science doesn't have it all figured out, right? But, get me there a little bit closer to an understanding. That's kind of what I need. So let's talk about consciousness as a dimensional traveler. So you're talking about your consciousness not being in that. So if dimensions are layered frequencies, what if you're the dial, right? Think of consciousness as like a radio tuner. When you raise your frequency, whether through meditation or intention, you can change it in music, right? You can turn on something and completely put yourself in a good mood or a sad mood if you're listening to music. You can change it with love, and even if you're in awe of something, then you begin to perceive and interact with higher dimensions because your frequency is higher. These aren't just abstract, they have texture. Some people can describe this, as different ways. I'm going to show you another um, thing that I created here. I'm going to go to image 7. Let me show you this really quickly. Share screen. Okay. So in image 7, you can kind of look at that while I'm going over this. But so here's some of the ways that people will describe their interaction with other dimensions. They talk about them as realms of color beyond the human spectrum. So there are frequencies of light outside our visible range, right? Of the 400 to 700 nanometers that we have the visualization to be able to perceive, which we know, right? Because we know about ultraviolet lights, we know about infrared lights, and we talk about higher vibrational light. That's not yet categorized by science, but people who access higher states of consciousness often describe seeing colors that don't exist, which may be a translation of multidimensional frequency into sensory form. And I don't know about you guys, but I know when I've had visions and meditations and interactions with other things, the colors were brighter, more distinct. When I talked about seeing Gianna, um, and she was 7-8D. Um, her hair was a color I hadn't seen before. The closest I could say was like a type of blonde, but we don't have that color here. People also describe it as being um, that the light is intelligent and it can speak directly to you. Like, right? We hear that from people like getting like light codes, downloads from the light. In higher dimensions, light may not just be electromagnetic radiation, it may be encoded with intention, information, or even consciousness itself. Many mystics and experiencers describe encounterings with living light that communicates telepathically or emotionally, bypassing language. I think that's absolutely true. And I can go even further on that when I'm talking about the fact that I think that if light is got a vibration and it's the photonic energy and stuff is like electricity and things live in those frequencies where life exists, then you can talk about there arguably being a theory where talk about sunlight, right? Let's just go with that, not even going outside of our planet. We're just talking about sunlight. If you're in the house and the windows are open, you're getting a certain aspect of sunlight. And if you go outside where there's nothing impeding you, there's no clouds in the sky, and the sun is just shining down on you, then you have another. But if you were to stand right where there's a ray of light, and you might have seen this if you take pictures outside and there's like rays coming down and you can see that ultraviolet and the rainbow kind of colors that come in into your light that your camera will catch. And there's something. What if the individual spectrums of light that are existing in just those three representations that I gave you have life that are living within them outside of our ability to see in that 400 to 700 nanometer, that we have access to in perceiving light. But there's things that live and it bumps right up against you, right? You're talking about being able to put yourself in the perspective of light in those frequencies. What's there? What are you interacting with that you don't even perceive of? It's interesting to think about. People also talk about geometries that pulse and breathe when they're talking about other dimensions. They talk about sacred geometry often appearing animated or at altered states, behaving sentient or like fluid structures. These geometries are thought to be building blocks of creation, light codes of frequency, and adjust and respond to awareness. And people also talk about feelings of home, so profound that they remember lives that they never lived, yet they still believe that they have, right? This is an emotional resonance that many report when touching into other dimensions, an overwhelming recognition of soul memory, connection, and timelessness. It may indicate contact with other aspects of yourself or your soul group fragments across timelines and universes. In higher dimensions, the rules of time and space would change. Light doesn't just illuminate, it communicates. Thoughts become motion, feelings would become form, and your awareness, it is the vehicle. I mean, imagine that, right? It would be interesting to kind of think of it from that perspective. Um, Let me just check in with you guys. Yes, Lisa, you'll always be known for your whys in the house. Your explanations are such a gift. Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate you saying that. I really do. I want it to be, you know, interesting, but I also want you to feel like you're getting something out of it. So I really do appreciate that. Yeah, like plasma, it's alive, right? Exactly like plasma. Very interesting. I love all of this. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so we're talking about dimensions now from that perspective. Um, let's kind of go into it a little bit more. So, my personal story was a little bit about that light, right? That we were talking about. That was like almost a year ago now, I want to say, and I actually called Katie to talk to her from Katie in the chorus. Um, but the dimensions that I was looking at, they weren't linear or flat, right? They were these spherical, fluid, living things. It was communicating with me. introduced itself to me as a 3D, and told me that I was part of it, and that all of us are, as a collective, um, that we were all creating it out of love. And I saw those little grains of light, like floating, like infinite sand. That's what it looked like. It looked like sand, and it was forming like a vast bubble of consciousness. And then from above, when I was looking at it, it looked kind of like a wagon wheel. But as I turned it, it was looking more toroidal. Toroidal. I don't know why I couldn't say that right now. And it was kind of spiraling, and it was like alive, almost like, that many stranded DNA, like a helix, right? But it was made of light. Um, that didn't match string theory for me exactly. It felt more like water than string, and more like a resonance than a vibration. It was a consciousness. It was like liquid intelligence, and like I think Stephanie was just talking about, like maybe even more like a plasma. And I believe that it showed me that each dimension is not just a level, but like a being, or a consciousness. It was a presence, um, the soul of like an entire collective somehow. Um, was it was incredible, and kind of life changing, because I was in awe of the entire thing. Um, I don't know. It was crazy, but it made me look at things. If you're talking about it from a science perspective, obviously we haven't had the math and the science to really be able to kind of reach where it doesn't get wonky with math, where we can go into the 12 dimensional. They can only really get to 10, and then kind of 11 if they allow for those brains, branes, the membranes, to allow for these other dimensional places to exist. But I don't know. It just kind of explained to me that we're not there yet in our understanding. Um, so let's take it a little bit farther, because now we're talking about, when we're talking about dimensions. One of the things that was shown to me too was like, a gradient band of like frequency and color and geometry. It had its own tonalities and subtonalities within it. And so those are kind of like the language of dimensions, right? Um, and so it's almost like is beautifully echoed in that book, of Human Awakening by Katie in the chorus. Emotions aren't just reactions; they're energetic coordinates, frequencies, that we tune into to broadcast from. The chorus describes the emotional spectrum as essential to understanding our multidimensional nature. From fear to love, each emotional state is a harmonic within a larger symphony of consciousness. Emotions help us to locate ourselves within a frequency band. So it's acting as indicators to where we're resonating and what dimensions we're aligned with. When we acknowledge and integrate all emotions without judgment, we harmonize our frequency and expand our dimensional awareness. The chorus emphasizes that emotions are not blocks, but bridges, gateways to more expansive states of being. Just like colors or musical notes, each emotion serves as a function in our vibrational expression, from the heavy grounding of grief to the transcendent lift of joy. So let's connect some dots, or better yet, waveforms. Dimensions correspond to frequency ranges, much like octaves in music, right? So human consciousness tends to hang out around 8 to 12 hertz in a relaxed but like alert state. That's just one tiny sliver of what's out there. And colors and frequencies, um, they're sound waves too, and so are emotions. So I have a visual that I can show you with this too. um, Share screen. That is not the one I wanted to show you. Oh, I don't know if I missed it. Well, this is still, maybe this is it. So here we see is a triangle. We have the hertz here, 180 hertz, and you see the shape, and there's a color to it, right? The hertz would be the frequency that it has. A circle or a square would be around 360, right? And so on. So when we're looking at it from that perspective, and colors are frequencies, and so are sound waves, and so are emotions, and wait for it, so is geometry, right? Each one exists in a vibrational spectrum. Color is a specific range of light frequencies measured by terahertz. So, for example, red vibrates at a certain color. Red by itself can vibrate at a certain color, at a certain hertz, and it's grounding, it's activating, and associated with survival and root energy. And blue would range in a different hertz, right? And it's has a calming and communicative quality to it. It's linked with your throat chakra and higher truth, just like music notes, um, or feelings or colors carry energy that affect your mood, your perception, and even your physiology. It's not just visual, there's like a vibrational aspect to it, right? And so is geometry. Geometry isn't just shape, it's spatial frequency. Sacred geometry, like the flower of life or the 64 tetrahedron grid, encode harmonic relationships found throughout nature. We were talking about the Fibonacci sequence, right? And it's in the cosmos, and it's even in your DNA. These shapes are more than symbols, they're mathematical expressions of vibrational fields in form. So you're looking at a shape in geometry, you're looking at a vibration, you're looking at a color, you're looking at the symbolic mathematical expression. That's what you're looking at. The higher the frequency, the more complex and radiant the geometry becomes. I'm gonna start coughing. Frickin'. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I could feel that coming on. I'm just dying over here. Sorry. 1 second. Okay. Recovered. Sometimes I do that. I don't know why. I did that with I did that in Grafton when I was talking with Craig. I'm just trying to make sure. Sorry, guys. Anyway. Okay. Am I good? Am I good? I think so. My eyes are watering. I'm like choking. Okay. I think I made it. Sorry. Let me see where I was now. I'm okay, Tubbs. Dobby's here like, are you okay? I hope I'm not coughing, too heavy for you guys. Buddy, what happened? I was choking? Do you ever do that? It's like nothing happened. You just swallowed weird. Like air. Sorry, guys. Okay. I'm going to pull it together now. Okay. Let's see where you guys are in the chat. Inhaling dust. I don't know, because I can be anywhere and I just like swallow weird. And all of a sudden, I'm like coughing. Dobby is like literally, come here, buddy. Ugh. Like on my knee. Right? I'm okay. Are we good? Can I get back to this now? Okay, good. Okay. I'm going to put him down. All right, buddy. Okay. Sorry, guys. I blame it on the throat chakra issues. I don't know what it is. It's so weird, but I do it all the time now. So Dobby's a cutie. Thank you. He's a sweetheart too. He gets like worried. He's funny. Okay, so let's go back to where we were, which hopefully I can figure out where I was. So we were talking about geometry, I'm pretty sure. I'm just kind of looking at my notes and stuff again. Um, so as your consciousness ascends in vibration, it begins to see, these forms. And sometimes people can be in meditation and they can say that they saw something that looks like a cube, or Metatron's cube, or, you know, um, whatever the symbolic thing is for that. And even if your eyes are closed, sometimes it's not your imagination. It's like your perception is expanding into a higher frequency band. Um, so let's just talk about it from like planets and um, like multi-location kind of stuff. I thought I had wanted to show you guys one of the things we were talking about. Let me just show you now. I'm not sure where it was. I might have screwed up where I wanted to have it, but this is Nassim Haramein talking about um, our awareness and in creation. So let me just put this back.
It's the nature of your consciousness. You absorb, look, you have little black holes right here, and they absorb photons, don't they? And you interpret what the photons are telling you, and then you feed, and each one of your atoms is connected to the vacuum. You feed back the information to the vacuum through your actions, and the universe feeds you back your reality. Right? And it's coordinated with everybody's reality because we're all in the same field.
Okay. So, that's kind of what we're talking about with our awareness in even in dimensions, but through consciousness and how we talk about that. So let's bring it back down sort of, to just kind of where we're talking about planets and multi-location and kind of like the cosmic where, right? So do you ever wonder if Earth exists in more than one dimension at once? I think it does. I think you do too, right? So do I. Um, there's the physical Earth, there's the energetic Earth, there's the astral Earth, there's the light grid Earth, and some say there's even a 5D version of Earth that's already humming right alongside this one, right? So when you see planets out there in the universe, let's look at our solar system. When we're looking at those planets, we may only see their lower frequency shells. What if Venus is in another dimension, is like teeming with life, and it's got like wisdom and light cities, and it's, tuned into this like higher dimensionality, right? That would imply that our solar system and that maybe the universe isn't just spatial, but it's dimensional. Planets don't just orbit, they vibrate. And what you believe about how that works is kind of how you create, in your reality, right? So I mean, what do you guys believe about 5D Earth? Do you think that it's here? Do you think that it's something that attain? Like, what is your thought about that? Let's see. Oh, yeah. Let's see. I think I'm too far up. I love how he described that. I know, I love him. He's like my favorite physicist. Although I love Brian Greene too, but Brian Greene is more into like the string theory thing, and I think I've kind of moved past that with my visions and stuff. So, although you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, there's a lot there that's really good and it makes a lot of sense. Um, there's parts of it that I can't resonate with anymore. Um, in all dimensions, are all I think they are all here, and we can only see what frequency we vibrate at. I love that, and I agree. That's exactly where I'm at too, Stephanie. Um, okay, so so then we're talking about the observer effect, and that's kind of what Nassim was talking about. Maybe that's where I was going to have that. Um, because, if you're the observer of something, or there's an observer of how things work, then, here's where it gets really weird, right? And powerful. In quantum physics, there's a principle called the observer effect, which we've spoken about in a couple of our shows now. And the idea is that particles behave differently when they're observed, right? Your attention, your consciousness alters reality. So you don't just live in a dimension, you shape it. You code it with your beliefs, your expectations, and your energy. That's what Nassim was talking about. So if higher dimensions are available and your consciousness can access them, if you think about it from that perspective, what would you build? And what would you feel? And what would you remember if that was the case for what you could do, from that real perspective? And how do you think about it? When I saw Gianna, and I was talking about seeing her in a higher dimension, I was looking at her on a ship, and her skin was almost translucent. And it was, I think the closest thing that I could explain to it was like she was almost ghost-like, not quite, but almost ghost-like. And she had these little tiny sparkles that looked like little points of light in her skin. And her hair was that, like I told you, it was a color that I hadn't seen here before. And when I was talking to my guidance, they were saying something close to 7-8D with her. And I stopped because I was like, I thought there was no physicality. I thought there was no physicality after like 5D. They say, well, there's no more, you don't have any physical body after that. How could I be looking at her? She's not totally physical, but there was definitely a form there. There was definitely a part that was like material there. And they said, no physicality from what perspective? From the 3D perspective, it wouldn't look like there was any physicality. But if you were looking at her from the perspective of where she was, a 7-8D perspective, then that's what you would see. And then they reminded me of Brian Greene's example that he had in his book when he was speaking about race cars. And he was saying if you were standing on the side of a race car strip and a car went by you as fast as it could, it might look like a blurb to you, right? It might be so fast that it's going to look like something that you can't comprehend. You just saw it kind of go by, but you really can't give any detail about the car, definitely not about the driver. But if you were to be in a race car right next to that car and you were driving at the same rate of speed, and now you turned over and you looked at the driver, now you can see what color hair he has, the fact that he's wearing sunglasses, that he has a white shirt on, right? And that's because you're moving at the same rate of speed. But somebody that was standing still wouldn't be able to detect those things. And it was the same thing that they were telling me, that the molecular structure of those higher dimensions, they're moving at such a fast rate of speed that we can't perceive it. But that doesn't mean that they're not there. It just means that we're not capable of seeing it. It's like watching your fan, your ceiling fan. When it's stopped, you can see all the blades. But if you turn it up all the way, they start to kind of look like they're just like a blur. And you can't make out each individual one anymore because it's moving too quickly for you. So it's the same kind of concept, right? In those molecular things. So it's my understanding that until you get to like 12D, which is like the source divinity, like layer of dimensionality, you're going to find that there's some level of beingness there. I don't know if it's that you would have to be in that. It could just be light. I don't know. It could just be light. That's still a waveform, right? When we see things that are light beings and things like that. But that's what I saw. That's what I saw in it, and that was the explanation that I was reminded. So I found that really interesting. Let's see. When I look at Venus in the sky without sight glasses on. It looks like a spiky snowflake. Oh, that's cool. And the moon looked like a lotus flower. How pretty. Yeah, I like that too. No, you know what? Who knows what you're perceiving, right? Um, so if we're talking about the observer effect, which, is kind of what even Emma was talking about in the chat just now, um, then maybe you're realizing that you're not just inside the simulation, you know, you're part of the co-creator of that simulation, and maybe it looking like that to you is not necessarily um, wrong. It's not maybe what I would see, but that doesn't mean that it's not correct in what you're seeing. So, you're helping kind of run the code, right? That's in this place. So, it's just to remember that all of these things and these dimensions, they're not just out there, right? They're within you too. You're not like some small thing that's limited, you're infinite. So, it's just to stay curious and to remember that this is who we are and the information that we're getting. So, um, oh, hi, I'm glad that you showed up. Um, that's kind of what I was thinking of. Let's see. What is the quantum physics principle that you illustrate using the race car and traveling at the same rate of speed? Um, I don't know what the principle is, but I have the book. It's on the bookshelf, and I will pull it out and look at it. And when I do, because they reminded me of that, and they reminded me of another one actually. They were talking about when they were talking about the speed of light, but I'll pull it out, and then maybe I'll take a picture of that page, and I'll text you with it. So, um, well, it's the observer effect. In part of what we were talking about, but I don't think, no, it wasn't in that part. It was talking more about the molecular structure and the spinning rate of things at a faster state, because the faster that they start spinning, molecules start spinning, the farther that they spread apart, they don't become as dense. And so density would change in that way, which would give us the other densities or dimensions, right? Because now the molecules are spread out farther, which would explain Gianna's kind of translucent look as well, because she's not going to be as dense as 3D would be, because the molecules would be farther spread out from each other. So, but from the perspective of where she was at, it would still be a physicality, and they would still have maybe things, maybe they'd still have a table or desk or whatever, but if the molecules are spread out more, to us it wouldn't be perceivable. Or even to say, if you were in a density that was lower than it, but higher than where we are, it's all relative. Um, so, I don't know. It's interesting. Someone said to me, it's all happening in the same place, just different densities. Yeah, I think that there's some of that for sure. I think that there's other places as well, but I think that there could be many instances in a multidimensional universe of Earth, right? Where you could be a lot of things happening simultaneously at the same time. So that's it. I hope that you guys understood and feel like you got something out of that, about dimensions. It's hard. It's a hard concept to understand, but I think it's an important one to understand because it's so foundational to us expanding our awareness and understanding that, you know, how things work. That's kind of like why I wanted to have this show the way that I have it, is because, you know, they're interesting concepts, but I don't know, tell me more, right? And don't forget, you guys, that um, Emma is going to be with John um, this Sunday for the hangout. They're going to have it at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It should be fun. Those guys are like super silly when they're together, and they do things like really light. So I hope that you'll join them. And sorry that I'll miss it, but it'll be nice to have, a different vibe, and we'll see what they do. They're silly, so it should be fun. It should be a fun hangout. Um, Thanks, Lisa. I had a lovely trip to your mom's. Thank you. I don't think it's going to be, this was great. Thank you so much, Lisa. Have a nice time with your mom. Thank you. I don't think this is going to be a super enjoyable one. Honestly, she's not feeling great. She's not doing as well as I had hoped. But I know that, with brain injuries, these things take time, and you never know really what it's going to be. The doctor told us that it could be the kind of thing where we just have a whole new baseline for her, or it could be the kind of thing where it takes 2 months or 6 months. They said up to 2 years of of her healing and doing this. So um, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what she does. But thank you to everyone for that. I remember understanding at some point that there are treasures and technology being protected by high frequency until we're ready for it. Yeah, yeah, I think so too. Um, let's see. I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, but you guys, I'm sending love to all of you. I'm so thankful that you guys all came and hung out with me. Let me know what you think in the comments if you guys get a chance to. And if you think anyone else would be interested in sacred sites, multidimensional me, please share it. I would like to kind of see what people think about these concepts and if they resonate. So I love you all. Thank you all for your wishes about my mom. And I will see you guys all next week. Okay. Sending you guys lots of love. If I can jump on with Johnny and Emma from Arizona, I will try to do that too. So, but I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.